information.
I want to take you now to Anne Arundel County in the briefing. We will hear from the county executive, the fire chief, the fire marshal, and the special agent in charge of the Baltimore
Anne Arundel
ATF.
County Fire Chief Alan Graves, Anne Arundel County Fire Marshal Deputy Chief Scott Hoaglander, and Special Agent in Charge Bill McMullen of the Baltimore Field Office of ATF. Since the beginning of this tragic incident on January 19th, we have communicated to you our commitment to the timely release of appropriate information. We have now reached a point in this investigation where we are able to share more information. First, I would like to take just a quick opportunity to thank the media for your patience and your cooperation throughout this investigation. Maintaining the integrity of the investigation to find answers remained the needed priority, and information has been released in a manner to not compromise that. Today, we will update you on the progress of the investigation and will provide you an opportunity to ask questions at the conclusion of the briefing. At this time, it's my privilege to introduce Anne Arundel County Executive Steve Shue to make some remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Let me begin by thanking all of our public safety partners for their around-the-clock work on this unspeakable tragedy. From the fire department to the ATF to the police department, the state's attorney's office, we're lucky to have so many dedicated public safety professionals in our county. The thoughts and prayers of an entire county go out to the Pyle and Boone families and to the Severn School community. As a father of two, I can't imagine the horrendous pain of losing these innocent children. And while I know no words will ever be able to relieve the heartache of losing so many loved ones in such a tragic circumstance, I'd like the families to know we stand with them, united, as they work through their grief. Let us keep Dawn, Sandra, Alexis, Charlotte, Caitlin, and Wes in our prayers, and take comfort in the knowledge that they are now in God's loving hands. Thank you.
At this time, Anne Arundel County Fire Chief Alan Graves will make some remarks.
Good afternoon. First, let me express for the men and women of the Anne Arundel County Fire Department our deepest condolences to the Pyle and Boone families. Our collective hearts break for the tragedy that you have to bear. As you know, on Monday afternoon, the investigation team recovered a sixth body from the fire scene at 936 Childs Point Road. The team worked diligently under very difficult circumstances since the fire occurred over 1 week ago. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner has positively identified the victims as the 6 people who were reported to be at the house at the time of the fire. They are Don Pyle, age 56, Sandra Pyle, age 63, Alexis Boone, age 8, Caitlin Boone, age 7, Charlotte Boone, age 8, and Wesley Boone, age 6. While the search for the victims was in progress, a concurrent investigation at the fire scene and elsewhere was conducted to determine where the fire started and its cause. The investigation team has determined the area where the fire started was in the great room of the house. This is a large room that has ceilings approximately 19 feet tall. Sleeping areas and living areas of the home are connected to the great room. Within the great room were the normal expected furnishings, in addition to a large Christmas tree approximately 15 feet tall. The investigation team has concluded that an electrical failure ignited the combustible material in the area, which quickly spread to the Christmas tree and the furnishings. It has been reported that the Christmas tree had been cut down more than 60 days prior to the fire. After a tree is cut, it begins to dry. How quickly it dries depends on the type of tree, how it is cut, and how often it is watered when it's on display. The involvement of the Christmas tree explains the heavy fire conditions found by the first arriving fire crews. I would personally like to acknowledge the difficult work performed by our County Fire Marshal, Deputy Chief Scott Hoaglander, Commander of Fire Investigation Unit Bob Howarth, Lead Investigators Lieutenant Brian Mayers and Lisa Herb, Special Agent ATF, and the Public Information Officer Captain Russ Davies. This has been a difficult week for them and all of the investigation team, and I'm very proud to be associated with such a dedicated group of professionals. I would also like to thank our investigation team partners, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Anne Arundel County Police Department, the Maryland State Fire Marshal's Office, the Annapolis Fire Department and Fire Marshal's Office, the Montgomery County Fire Investigation Unit, and the Prince George's County Fire Investigation Unit. In addition, there were other supporting partners that helped us. In addition to being part of the investigation team, the Anne Arundel County Police Department provided scene security and personnel who moved literally tons of debris by hand. The Anne Arundel County State's Attorney Wes Adams and his office for their help obtaining documents needed for a thorough investigation. The Bay Area Search and Recovery Canines, Mason-Dixon Rescue Dogs, and Mid-Atlantic Dogs for the search dogs that helped us to locate the victims. And the Anne Arundel County Department of Public Works for providing heavy excavating equipment. That concludes my statement. I'd like to ask Special Agent in Charge Bill McMullen to speak.
Thank you, Chief. On behalf of the men and women of ATF, I'd like to send our deepest condolences to the family members, friends, community, and everyone affected by this horrible tragedy. I want to also express our appreciation to the neighbors of Don and Sandra Pyle, and the residents of the Annapolis community who provided the ATF agents and the fire investigators who worked this scene for the last 2 weeks with a tremendous amount of support, patience, and understanding as we work through this investigation. As Chief Graves noted, ATF agents from the Baltimore Field Division and the ATF National Response Team, along with fire investigators from all of the local departments that were part of this unified effort, were able to conclude that this fire was the result of a tragic accident that occurred at the absolutely worst possible time while the Pyles and their grandchildren were sleeping. In addition to processing the fire scene, ATF agents and fire investigators conducted over 50 interviews, ranging from family members, neighbors, and firefighters at the scene to any and every person who had access to the Pyles' home, to include architects, contractors, and interior decorators. Through these interviews, investigators at the scene obtained additional intelligence information to include in the overall scope of the investigation and to validate the final determination of the cause and origin of the fire. ATF's relationship with our state and local partners allowed for the seamless coordination of responsibilities from the very beginning of this incident and will continue as investigators will conduct additional tests and analysis of the event in order to learn more about the conditions that led to the loss of 6 lives and that have undoubtedly changed many more. Thank you.
At this time, we will accept questions for Agent McMullen and Deputy Chief Hoaglander.
Can you explain us what led the kind of the sequence of events as you know them? If there was an electrical failure, what failed that would have ignited the tree?
Chief Agent, you want to come over?
There's actually several scenarios that could have played out in this particular incident, and we're still looking at all of the different possibilities. We know that certain scenarios could have ignited the tree, and as we continue on, like Agent McMullen said, we're going to do some test burns and some other activity at the ATF lab in Beltsville and try and figure out exactly what the chain of events were.
With a 15-foot tree in there, how bad, how fast would it have gotten? What would the conditions have been like?
Well, we know from a timeline from the 911 calls and the calls from the alarm company that the chain of events occurred within 2 to 3 minutes.
Can you say whether there was any evidence that Mr. Pyle tried to put the fire out, and if there was any evidence to show that some of the victims tried to get out?
I think that would be circumstantial at this point. In respect to the family, we're not going to go into those details.
How much of a role did the Christmas tree actually play? Was it the electrical fire that then caused the tree to go up in flames? Without the tree, in other words, would this have been as bad?
No. The fuel load from the Christmas tree itself is what created the significant amount of fire and heat to cause the fire to spread as quickly as it did.
Given the makeup of the room and what was in the room, did the family have a chance, given their locations?
I think as we continue to do some test burns and actually try and replicate what happened at the scene, we'll know a little bit more on the exact time frame, and that's something we plan on doing within the next couple of weeks. We've actually reached out and obtained some trees similar to what were found in this house, and we're planning on looking at exactly what the time frame was when that happened and what kind of heat.
Were they found in the sleeping areas connected to the great room?
Out of respect to the family, we're not going to talk about that right now.
So it's safe to say there's still a lot of questions you have about how exactly this happened. You don't have everything figured out.
I know that everybody has a lot of questions, and we thought it was important for us to have the press conference today, really just for to help with closure for the family and closure for the community. We're very comfortable, that this was an accidental fire that's very tragic. And we, just like you, still have questions, and there's a lot of work that we still have to do that we're going to continue to pursue. Because one of the things we want to make sure is that we have all the information and we can do the things that prevent this from happening again.
Chief, a lot of folks are watching this right now and saying, wow. I mean, everybody's got a Christmas tree up, and some people like to leave them up, 60 days to cover, from Thanksgiving on. What is it that you were able to gather in terms of the intelligence about the family that leads you to this conclusion and also leads you to such an inferno in this fire? I think that's what is the most troubling question is, why did it burn? Well, how can you answer that question?
Well, I think the investigative team, they're using their experience with similar type fires. A fire needs an ignition source and it needs a fuel, and we're aware that Christmas trees, when they're dry, they burn quickly. So that is something that we feel comfortable that whatever the circumstance in which the Christmas tree ignited, which we believe was electrical in nature, was something that led to the large fire that was found by the crews when they first arrived.
Is it your information that the tree would be lit at night?
We believe it was lit most of the time.
Do you have a sense
Are those lights what caused the...
Do you have a sense of how long it might have taken for it to go from a nice quiet house to an absolute disaster? I mean, are we talking a matter of minutes, a matter of seconds? What kind of time frame would that have been?
I believe that we feel that it happened very quickly. To put a number on it, I think that's difficult to do.
Can you confirm smoke inhalation as the cause of death?
I can't confirm that. We don't have all the information back from the medical examiner's office, so we'll wait till they complete that investigation before we talk about that.
Could you tell, was the Christmas tree completely dried out, or was there water that was sent for it?
There was a water basin. We really can't describe in what condition the tree was in, because obviously there's not, in this case, there wasn't a lot of the tree remaining.
Can you talk about the alarm system? I understand that there was active smoke detectors. Were they sounding with the fire crew that got there, or was it not?
The alarms? You want to talk about the alarm?
Sure.
Yeah. Timeline.
The house was equipped with a smoke alarm system throughout and interconnected and monitored by an alarm company. The alarm company did receive notification of an alarm in the house and subsequently notified 911. Within 2 minutes of that notification, we also received a 911 call from a neighbor stating that the house was on fire. So the timeline of the rapid fire growth is pretty much defined by that sequence of events.
We use the term smoke detectors, which are supposed to wake you up. Did they work as far as you know?
Yes. There's no indication they did not.
And just to confirm, it's been reported out there today that smoke inhalation was believed to be the cause of death, but you're not willing to comment on that today?
We don't have the official report from the ME's office as of yet.
There have been reports that the house was a smart house and there may have been some video surveillance. Was any of that recovered, or have you been able to get any of that?
We were able to recover a DVR, but it was severely damaged by fire, and we were not able to get anything off of it.
Kept off premise?
Do not know the answer to that.
Knowing what you know, I mean, there's so many questions to answer, but knowing what you know now about what may have really fueled this fire, are there things, even at this point, that you would hope the community could potentially take away from this tragic accident?
Well, I mean, obviously, we're all concerned about that. The reason you conduct fire investigations is for two reasons. One, if it's a criminal act, the obvious course that you would take to track down the criminals that perform that act, but it's also, from a fire service perspective, is to prevent tragedies like this from happening again. So we need to do some further testing to see exactly how bad these particular trees reacted under these conditions, and make recommendations from there, whether it's not keep the tree up as long or that type of thing. You know, we'll figure that out as we conduct more tests.
Are there concerns about the lightweight construction and the size of the home with the large space?
I would not describe that home as lightweight construction at all.
Can anybody speak to, like, you talked about the grand room being such tall ceilings, and the home in general has, you know, sort of wide hallways and large open spaces, and how that might have contributed to the spread of the fire?
I think it's more about the actual fuel load of the Christmas tree and the output of energy and heat from that particular fuel load that caused the rapid fire spread. Really had nothing to do with the building construction itself.
Any indication whether sprinklers would have made a difference in this situation?
Would say without a doubt. Unfortunately, this home was constructed 4 or 5 years before the legislation was enacted for residential sprinklers.
What year was that? Year of the construction of the home?
2005. So, Russ.
Okay, thank you. As we receive more information, we will provide it. We thank you for your time.
Live coverage for you here on News Channel 8. Investigators saying an electrical fire ignited a Christmas tree, and that sparked that massive blaze that reduced a riverfront mansion in Annapolis to ruins and killed 6 people. Live coverage for you there. And the